Well, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken will visit China this week amid heightened tensions between the two countries. Blinken will fly out on Friday. It is his first visit to China since his cabinet appointment. He was supposed to make the trip in February, but that was postponed after a spy balloon linked to China was found in the U.S. The State Department says Blinken will meet with senior officials and, quote, discuss the importance of maintaining open lines of communication. Let's bring in Leland Miller, China Beige, but co-founder and CEO. Leland, it's been an interesting strategy coming out of the White House. On the one hand, talking about this visit as a potential thawing of relations, and yet what we have heard from Anthony Blinken as well as National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is really tougher rhetoric on China, at least around industrial policy.
Well, the hope is that there will be a nuanced China policy. So I think with the importance of what's happening right now with Blinken going over, perhaps followed by some other cabinet members later this year, is that the lines of communication have been broken down. And, that's not a big deal until it is. One of the pieces of leverage that the Chinese have used against the Americans, say, we're not going to answer your military hotline. We're not going to talk to you. It creates the possibility that you could have things blow out of control because there's not enough communication between the two. So just getting things back on track from a talking standpoint is not meaningless. And there's not a lot of hopes that anything's going to be accomplished anytime soon. But just getting people talking again is not nothing.
And so what do we expect from here? I mean, we've also had some movement on the part of the Biden administration in terms of regulation around U.S. companies doing business in China, but also Taiwanese companies that do business in China and the U.S. Do you expect, not necessarily as a result of this visit, but just in general, any kind of tweaks to that and how they inform the relationship?
No, we should expect very little to come out of this, both directly and indirectly. The reality is that, there isn't really an opportunity for a major thawing because there's not really that many areas of agreement between the two countries right now. They could stop the precipitous decline. They could open up the lines of communication. On the other hand, there's a lot being made in the headlines about how the Biden administration is full speed ahead on export controls and sanctions and other things. I think that's also being blown out of proportion. We've seen a lot less of that than what has been made out to be this unprecedented strike. So that's slow moving. It's slow moving. There is an effort to ring fence advanced technology from China, but it's incremental and it's slow, and it has not gotten buy-in from all the other allies that need to be bought into this yet. So you're moving in that direction, and things are going to be tense going forward. But also, I think that's being blown out of proportion a little bit too.
Yeah. So the first step here being get the lines of communications open again and up and running again. We did, the tensions that we've seen between the two countries have certainly made at least a lot of businesses a little nervous. Those that operate in China. We've talked about, sort of potentially foreign investment slowing down as well. News today, Bill Gates arriving in Beijing. His visit reportedly centered around global health. The tech giant will reportedly, or we should say Bill Gates will reportedly meet with President Xi at some point during the trip. We don't know exactly what the discussion will be, but I wonder what you're hearing from the business community right now, and to what extent a visit like this could maybe really reassure those who are a little concerned about what that business environment is going to look like for American businesses, multinationals in China moving forward.
Well, the business community has always played a role in trying to temper the hostilities between U.S. and China because they want to be in China and they want to be making money. But the role of the business community is much more limited now than it was in the past, simply because people have now elevated the relationship between many aspects of the relationship between the U.S. and China into the national security field and said, look, we don't care what businesses are saying. If there's a national security imperative here, that's what's more important. So, the days of you're not going to stop seeing Wall Street lobby itself quite crazy in order for better relations because they want to go in and make a buck in China. But the reality is that the days of the business community, the Wall Street community being able to dictate the tone or the pace or certainly the direction of the U.S.-China relationship, those are over. To the extent that you have some dialogue back and forth, sure, it's fine. But I think we should be very hesitant to make more of this than what it is.
Leland, let's sort of broaden the conversation here beyond just U.S.-China. You've always got a good pulse on where the Chinese economy is. When you think about where things have been so far this year, yes, things have opened up at a much more rapid rate, and yet there seems to be concern about how quickly the growth is coming as a result of that. What's your sense as you look to the coming months, year end, about how quickly activity could pick up further?
Yeah, well, look, the major lesson should be that everything is relative. When the COVID zero Band-Aid was pulled back, at end of last year, there was this idea that the Chinese economy was going to magically reopen and great things were going to happen. Yes, it reopened, but one thing we kept pounding sand about is it's not going to reactivate anytime soon. December, January, February, probably into March, you're not going to see any type of strong activity for the simple reason that hundreds of millions of people are going to be sick with COVID. And it's going to take a while to break down the structures around the COVID zero administrative state. So, you had that earlier this year. The problem was that people came to this year really gung-ho about this ridiculous idea of a Chinese rally, stock market, economy, et cetera, early in the year. It was never going to happen the way it did in America because you don't have the same type of dynamics. You don't have a consumer culture. You don't have household stimulus out the wazoo the same way you have in the United States. So there was unrealistic expectations early in the year. Those were not met, but that's fine. Now we're getting to the point where it's the second quarter and it's go time for the recovery or not. So, looking April, May, now June, we have to be seeing much better data now, or they're going to be very, very tempted to come in with bigger stimulus. But I think the takeaway here is people got too negative too soon. We may see some disappointing Chinese recovery, but it's too soon to be making that determination quite yet.
All right, we'll have to check back in with you then, Leland. Thank you so much, Leland Miller of China Beige Book. Appreciate it.